A very warm welcome to you. Thanks for joining us on this week's episode of the program Around Africa, where we bring to you top issues happening on the continent. I'm your host, Brownson Uwana. On the program today will be X-Train, Central African Republic, and the crisis that has been going on in that part of the continent for some period of time now. On the program today, we are going to analyze the origin of the Central African Republic crisis, as well as look at the impact this crisis have had in the lives of the two major religions, that's the Christian and the Muslims there. And of course, we also look at the involvement of the international community on how they've been able to handle this crisis. Welcome on board. I have with me Biodun Showumi. He will be analyzing some of the top things we'll be looking at today. Good to have you, Mr. Biodun.
I'm pleased to be here.
All right, Central African Republic, the crisis had lingered, and of course, it should be recalled that sometime last year, March precisely, there was an overtaking in the government. But then, where would you say the problem started from?
Yeah, it actually started from day one, which is in 1960, when Central African Republic gained independence. Prior to that, pre-independence, the developments in CAR clearly showed that France gravitated towards building an elite in Bangui, which is, you have a river running around Bangui, and that's where you had the elites with Western education who are expected to take over power, doing little or nothing for other parts of the country, particularly the northern part, which is the Muslim part of Central African Republic. And there wasn't any clear attempts to ensure that they have very strong institutions, including customs and immigration, to patrol the border and ensure the security of that country. This has been there from day one. Therefore, there's a thin line dividing people of Central African Republic, Sudan, and Chad. You know, you can easily cross the border. In one part, you realize that it's the same people moving across. They have their kids and kin, you know, on the other side of the border. So with that clear economic divide and developmental divide, it then became a problem. So that schism has been there from day one, and the way the country evolved after David Dacko, the first president, was overthrown by Emperor Jean Bede Bokassa, self-styled emperor, the country went through a lot of difficulties, you know, under the military rule, authoritarian rule, you know, not allowing for the development of institutions of states. So again, you have Ankpatase came in, you know, he was removed. You have, you know, they've had 5 coups since then, with so many decades of military rule. So given this situation, all the necessary institutions of states were actually depressed. And CAR is a very rich country in mineral resources, but there is absolute lack of confidence by international investors to invest in CAR, because they've never been able to enjoy any stable democracy for any, you know, reasonable length of time without any interruption or rebellion or military coup. So therefore, the country wallows in abject poverty, up to the point that it occupies it's rated 180 out of 186 countries in the world by United Nations using the Human Development Index, you know, and that tells a very terrible story of how CAR emerged from beginning till today. Nothing have changed up to today since 1960. If you go to Central African Republic, you hardly will see the presence of governance in so many parts. Even before this, before March 2013, when the Seleka rebels, you know, overthrew the government, hardly could you see any signs of governance. You know, all the institutions that are supposed to bind people together are all weakened. But importantly, one fact that must be said is, prior to independence and prior to Jean Bede Bokassa overthrowing David Dacko, the people have lived peacefully, both Christian and Muslims living peacefully. If you go to Bangui, today in Bangui, most of the supermarket and shops, you know, are owned by Muslims. All the goods being consumed are owned by the Muslims. The Christians are largely well educated, and therefore they've been coexisting for so many years, and that is why I think it's to oversimplify the situation in CAR if one should describe the situation as purely religious. It is not.
Okay, Francois Bozezi, the former president, as well as Michel Dutschke, these two guys have been going, they've been having lockerhead for a period of time. What do you think they went wrong, especially looking at the fact that they broke up when we thought Central African Republic was gradually gaining stability?
Yeah, it's clear. Francois Bozizé was in power and then made Jotodia his envoy in Sudan, in South Sudan. Jotodia, if you go into history, go through his profile, Jotodia is someone that has always been aspiring to rule the country, one way or the other. He's a Muslim, and he knew that he hardly would stand a chance to get there. But when he was in Sudan, South Sudan, he did form alliances with different rebel groups, and he was able to exploit that, knowing that they would in turn help him when he went back home. So that was what he did. The only problem they both had was oversharing the spoils of office, because that has been the lot and the fate of Central African Republic. They've always been having authoritarian leaders who loot the economy, blindly. And that has always been, they personalize the resources of the state, without developing those resources and without ensuring they are distributed. They are usually personalized, and then you patronize the military with it and patronize, the elites with it. So Jotodia, coming back from Sudan, now formed the Seleka groups. Of course, given the collapse of Libya, they were also able to get arms, easy arms, to move in from Libya, to overthrow the government. So it's a combination of, when you look at what is going on in Central African Republic today, there is also the external factors, the role of France in what is going on, the role of Sudan and Chad. Those countries have histories of invading or actually sponsoring rebellions, in CAR.
But then what would you say they're really interested in? If like you said, sponsorship, for me to sponsor anything, I must have an interest.
It's the shifting power dynamics in the region. That is basically what the issue is. Because of the shifting power dynamics, with Libya gone, there's a new scenario. And once you have dynamics changing, everybody wants to be the regional power. And everyone wants to have an influence and protect their border. They think by influencing what is going on in another country will assure their own security. And because if you look at Chad, for instance, Chad too had so many years of histories of war. If you remember Gokoni Wedeye and all that. So they went through a lot of turbulent period where rebels were able to move in and out, to destabilize the government or to actually take over government. So it's exactly the same thing we are seeing going on when the ruling powers in Chad and Sudan, believes that their interest is best secured if they control those who rule CAR, because CAR has a fertile army, of people who are very disgruntled, who are not stakeholders in the economy, and therefore are liable to be lured economically, to form a military to invade or to interfere with the affairs of neighboring countries. So therefore, they have a vested interest there. In the case of France, France is the former colonial power who, in any case, believed that Central African Republic is still their backyard till today. France has invaded, they've contributed forces at so many times, interfered in the politics of Central African Republic, removed leaders, sponsored coups, and even what is going on in CAR, the removal of Bozizé, some people trace it also, partly to American influence and also to France influence, because France will have intervened to stop it. But what came after it became unmanageable, and that is why Jotodia had to go. If you remember the excuse, they gave two reasons why Bozizé had to go at that time at the meeting held in N'Djamena, I think in January 2013, yes. They cited the issue of his inability to maintain security, which is one, two, and also his inability, to ensure the development of the people. Those were the two reasons which they gave.
But then, there have been a lot of arguments about the current situation. Some people are saying it's a political battle. Some are saying it's a religious war. What would you say it is? Would you agree that it's a religious battle?
If we say it's a religious war, we are oversimplifying it. It's so easy. It fits into this Western thinking, the Western press thinking of Africa. Okay, they will start fighting. If they're not fighting over religion, they are fighting over ethnic. It's so easy. It's beyond that. It's poverty. Poverty is at the root cause. You need to go to Central African Republic and see how people exist. You are talking of a country where over 95% of the population are existing below poverty level. That is the country we are talking about. A country ranked 180 out of 186 countries in the world in terms of measuring the development and the well-being of the people using Human Development Index. You know, it's a very poor country, one of the poorest countries on earth, one of the most deprived countries with collapsed institutions. The institutions are not just there. Everything in the military is saying that if the president or the head of state is there, the only way you buy loyalty is not because it's your country, because you have to be patriotic. You buy loyalty using the spoils of office to buy loyalty from the military. And that is the country we're talking about. And in any case, as long as you allow your country to be plundered by Western companies, then that is fine. And you heart to the dictates of France particularly, then you don't have any problem. You would be maintaining power one way or the other. The day you start asking questions is when you run into problems. So, and you have the role of other countries in it. You know, you are, apart from the institutional weaknesses, you have, you know, the external influence there. You have the economic situation of the country. Before you now talk about religion, religion is when the whole thing has collapsed. Then people now look for their own umbrella to shield themselves from the rain. That is what is happening in the Central African Republic. These people have been coexisting for long, for so many, you would not believe it, for more than 100 years. They've been living together with having this problem. Even when under colonial rule, it's not. Most of the food being consumed in Bangui today, which is a majority Christian area, is supplied, you know, by Muslims, from Muslim shops. We've never had a case of food poisoning, that people deliberately poison, you know, the food. That's not the situation. What happened is the Seleka rebels came in with their own agenda, and they were unable to control the external forces, the external soldiers from South Sudan, you know, that joined them, and also from Chad that joined them. They were unable to control them, and those ones unleashed violence, aiming to pacify, you know, the Christian community. And that was what gave rise to the anti-machete group, the Christian anti-machete group. And that's the truth of the matter. But eventually, after Jotodia departure, now the Christians also decided, you know, to retaliate. So it's a kind of vengeance, you know, war, you know, over what happened when the Seleka people were there, and now you have that. But you'll expect the the peacekeepers, the AU peacekeepers, and France to maintain peace, because it's easy to resolve the problem in Central African Republic. What you cannot do is to say you pacify the people without providing the necessary support, aids, economic aid, that would allow stability, that would allow peace to reign.
Now, looking at all the things you've said, now that draws us back to what happened in Rwanda, where the Hutus and Tutsi were killing each other. But in Central African Republic, we are having it different. It's like a religious battle where the Muslims kill the Christians as well retaliate to the Christians. Would you say it's a sign of genocide?
On both sides, yes. There are cases, there are reasons to think we are faced with possible war crimes, you know, going on in those places. But then, again, it's complex. Is more complex than that. Who do you arrest? Oh, take Jotodia out of the equation. That was the thinking of the international community. Take Jotodia out of the equation, and then things will stabilize. Jotodia was taken out of the equation January
2014.
Yes, 2014. It seems he has been in Benin Republic, not in Chad, not in Sudan. But then the crisis persists. It's because you just don't remove Jotodia. You have to apply the necessary antidote. It's just like somebody being bitten by a scorpion. You now say, let's remove the scorpion. But you're not taking away the poison that the scorpion has injected. The poison in Central African Republic today, it's beyond religion. It's actually chronic poverty. People only hide under religion. That is essentially the problem. Look, let me give you a good example. If you go to the northern part of Central African Republic, go and see how people scramble for water. Water that many people have taken for granted. It's as bad as that. It's as bad as that. The western part is okay. When people look at peace and conflict resolution, they need to consider how to ensure that security can best be maintained through economic prosperity and not just through peacekeepers. And this is where the international community is failing in the case of Central African Republic, because the US is not much interested, because there's little to take away from that country. If Central African Republic has oil today, the story will have been different. The issue of saying is Christian and Muslim religion, it's easy. It's to allow the international community and so many people to feel helpless about the situation and say, what do we do? Maybe they almost, surrendering to partitioning the country along two lines. And that will not resolve the problem, because we still have the northern part, which is the largely Muslim-dominated area, very poor. That will not resolve the problem.
All right, let me hold you there. At this point, we'll go for a very quick break. As far as Central African Republic is concerned, there's still a lot of things to look out. Samba Panza was installed as the interim president of that country. And of course, there have been a lot of questions. A lot of people have also criticized the fact that as a woman, she has not been able to handle the situation well. But we also have to look at the international community, how well they have been involved, especially the United Nations. But that will be coming up after the break. Stay with us.
Core TV News, expanding your view.
All right, you're welcome back. You're still watching Around Africa on Core TV News. And of course, my name is Brownson Wana. At this point, we'll be looking at the involvement of the international community. But before then, a lot of people have criticized Catherine Samba Panza, the way she's gone about handling the situation. Do you think agenda has really got anything to do with the situation now, with the way she has handled it?
I think she's done very well in a very difficult situation, because throw anybody in that situation without providing the necessary number of troops to maintain security, which is one. Number two, without providing the necessary logistics to help in troop movements, because it's not enough to put troops on the ground. You need to provide the logistics, the equipment, the helicopters to help those troops to move quickly, to calm, to douse tension and calm situation. Then what she has failed to do, which for me it's a major failure, is to ensure that there's a kind of dialogue between the leaders of the Christian and the Muslim community in a way that will ensure that tension will go down in Bangui particularly. It's relatively better in other parts. I mean, when you look at other parts, it appears the Muslims are a bit more tolerant in other parts. If in the northern part, we've not heard of Christians.
Just a few days ago, about 1,600 Muslims moved out of Bangui.
Bangui, yes, that's what I'm saying. In Bangui, Bangui is the capital. Now, it's largely Christian dominated. The Christians are the one chasing, the anti-Balaka group are the militias are the one chasing the Muslims out. But we are not seeing a repeat of that in other parts of the country, largely. So you begin to ask yourself, despite the fact that a quarter of the population, about 1.2 million people out of 4.4 million, has been dislocated. They're all internal refugees or external refugees, one in one country or the other. We've not seen that kind of reprisal, and that gives cause for hope that the issue might not be religion, but there's a need to engage the religious leaders in dialogue. There have to be a form of dialogue between, the two major religions. That she has failed to achieve, in my view.
All right. Of course, we also look at the fact that a lot of analysts have suggested that it might be a spillover. Now, the crisis in Sierra might be spillover from their porous borders. You want to agree with that?
Yes. It's not about spillover. It's about the direct involvement of different countries, in the internal affairs of Central African Republic. Simply because Central Africa, if you look at that area particularly, that region particularly, they've always been, the people are almost like one people, one way or the other, intermingling with each other at the border area. So when you have a line being drawn separating people, it's easier for them to cross from one place to the other, and immediately they're in another country. They've been trading with each other, relating with each other. They've also been fighting, you know, providing militias, you know, in different countries. In the case of Central African Republic, some of the militias in Central African Republic actually fought in Chad. And some of them fought in South Sudan in support of the rebel movement. And therefore, everybody wants to ensure that they have a measure of control over internal affairs of CAR, or influence in CAR. And that is what is happening to ensure their own security. So that external factor is there. Therefore, there can never be any resolution without involving countries like Libya, like Chad, like South Sudan, and Sudan, you know, in resolving the issue in CAR. So there has to be, we must have a multilateral approach while also you have having a form of internal resolution of those problems.
All right, absolutely. Finally, before we say goodbye on the program, what would you suggest? What would you suggest as a permanent solution to the current crisis? Should Samba Panza be stepped down, or do you think they should bring in another interim government that would be probably stronger to really tackle this crisis?
I don't think she needs to step down. I think the issue is very clear. The international community is not paying enough attention or investing enough in Central African Republic.
You mean the United Nations?
The United Nations.
But it was reported that they sent more troops some months back.
No, they said they will send more troops, up to 12,000 this year. We have about 6,000 African Union peacekeepers there. That is barely enough for a country of 4.4 million people. The combined strength of the Central African Republic soldiers with the rebels, some are saying it's something close to 80 to 100,000. So how do you, when you combine it with the rebels, how do you now ensure the security of the place with 6.6 million? Those 600,000 African Union peacekeepers are largely in Bangui. That's where they are. We don't have enough. The UN is now saying they will increase it to 12,000. I still think 12,000 is not enough. In order to ensure we have proper security in that country, the United Nations need to deploy 25,000 troops with mandates, with proper mandate, you know, to ensure the security of lives and property, and must also provide the necessary logistics to do that. While at the same time, we need to have an international donor conference on what to do, on how to finance the reconstruction or the development of Central African Republic. Internally, what the Central African Republic government needs to do is to ensure that there is a form of conference that will involve the major actors, including the regional leaders, in order to save Central African Republic.
So are you saying the old leaders should be brought back to round table, the likes of Jotodia and Buzezi?
Far from it. I'm saying there are other key leaders, you know, religious leaders, both Muslim, Christian, and other key elite leaders, and also leaders in the northern part of Central African Republic who can sit down and work out a solution to their problem. It is not, Jotodia is in Benin Republic. He might have loyalists in Central African Republic. But don't forget that before he was removed, the Seleka movement itself was on a shaky note because it was already divided. So some of the leaders in Seleka group, which he led, were even against him. So we need to look at those leaders who can afford to sit down and discard all the old actors and then have a kind of common debate about the future of the country and work out the basis of their coexistence. That needs to happen, you know, internally, and it must involve the religious leaders. But on the external front, the international community has a responsibility while that is going on to also ensure that there are resources to help redevelop or develop or to inject into the economy of Central African Republic in order to at least provide a relief for the people. Then we need to have enough peacekeepers on the ground. I would suggest a figure of 25,000.
Absolutely. Let's see how well the United Nations would be able to tackle this matter. As a matter of fact, it's very, very important for the safety of life and property in Central African Republic. We look forward to when things will go back to what it used to be in that country. A very poor country, but suffering from a lot of crisis is not a very good one. We look forward to how well things will turn out to be in that part of the country in the very very short period. My name is Bronson Uwana. Thank you very much, Biodu, for coming around.
It's my pleasure.
I hope you will respond to our call next time.
Anytime.
All right, that's Around Africa today. Do join us next week where we'll bring some other issues to you. Have a wonderful day.